This is the same can of oil you bought 2 years ago. Same brand, same weight, same label. You would probably grab it again without thinking twice. That's the problem. In 2025, the motor oil industry moved to a new certification standard called GF7. It replaced GF6, which most drivers have never heard of either. The changeover happened quietly, the way these things always do, buried in small print on the back of the bottle, written in acronyms nobody explains, sitting right there on the shelf at eye level and completely invisible at the same time. This is not a cosmetic update. The tests got harder, the failure conditions changed. Oils that pass the old standard are not automatically good enough for the new one. What GF7 actually means, why it exists, and what it should change about how you buy oil, that's what this is. Let's get into it. Turbocharged engines changed the rules for motor oil. Small displacement, high boost designs, common now in everything from compact sedans to family crossovers, push oil harder than ever before. A typical modern turbo runs 14 psi of boost, forcing more air and fuel into each cylinder. Direct injection adds even more heat and pressure. Under the hood, oil isn't just lubricating parts. It's fighting to keep up with temperatures and stresses older engines never saw. By 2020, when LSAC released the GF6 standard, engineers already knew the pace of change was outstripping the test requirements. Engines were shrinking, turbochargers were everywhere, and emissions rules kept tightening. The oil's job became more demanding. It had to handle rapid stop-start cycles, survive long drain intervals, and protect against new forms of wear that didn't exist in the previous generation. Manufacturers started seeing problems that the old tests missed, like ring sticking, chain wear, and the kind of pre-ignition that can shatter pistons in a split second. By March 2025, the industry moved to GF7. This wasn't a marketing move. It was a direct response to what engineers were seeing in real engines. Oil breaking down too soon, deposits building up faster, and protection dropping off long before the next scheduled change. The new standard didn't just raise the bar. It rewrote the test to reflect the reality of today's turbocharged, high-stress engines. What's at stake isn't just a smoother idle or a cleaner dipstick. It's whether your engine still runs clean at 80,000 miles, or whether hidden damage has been building with every mile on the wrong oil. Low-speed pre-ignition isn't just a technical headache for engineers. It's the silent threat that can crack pistons or snap rods in modern turbo engines. But here's the catch. Most oils that passed the old test did so when they were fresh out of the bottle. The real danger appears months later, after the oil has been hammered by heat, combustion byproducts, and thousands of ignition cycles. In 2018, SAE researchers put this to the test. They took 4 oils, a basic mineral blend, and 3 modern synthetics, and ran each through a 10,000 cycle LSPI test in a turbocharged direct injection engine. All 4 passed the original GF6 limit for fresh oil. But after aging each oil to simulate 5,000 kilometers of real driving, the picture changed. 2 out of 3 modern synthetics failed the aged oil standard, producing more LSPI knock events than the baseline oil with no special additives. Only one formula kept LSPI events at or below the new GF7 threshold, a maximum of 2 knock events per 10,000 cycles. That's the line drawn by the new Sequence 9 test. The implications are clear. An oil that looks fine on day 1 can lose its protection long before the next scheduled change. The risk isn't obvious from the driver's seat. There's no warning light for a piston hammered by pre-ignition. But the damage adds up, mile after mile, especially in engines designed to squeeze every last bit of power from each drop of fuel. That's why GF7 certification now demands proof of aged oil LSPI resistance. Because what matters isn't just how oil performs fresh, but how it holds up when the miles and months pile on. Sludge and carbon deposits don't announce themselves until it's too late. In today's engine, especially with frequent stop-start traffic and short trips, oil faces a constant barrage of cold starts and incomplete warm-ups. Every time the engine doesn't reach full operating temperature, unburned fuel and moisture slip past the rings, mixing with oil and feeding the slow buildup of sludge. Over time, these deposits thicken, narrowing oil passages and starving critical components of lubrication. The result can be stuck piston rings, clogged filters, and eventually engine failure that looks like it came out of nowhere. GF7 draws a firmer line against this threat. Where GF6 allowed up to 1.0% sludge, by way after a standard oxidation test, GF7 cuts that ceiling to just 0.7%, a 30% reduction. To pass, oil must endure 1,200 degree hours of high-temperature oxidation and still keep sludge below this tighter limit. The new standard also introduces a cold start sludge test, simulating repeated winter cycles where condensation and fuel dilution are at their worst. These changes aren't just about keeping engines looking clean on the inside. When sludge forms, it can block oil flow to the top of the engine, leading to ticking lifters, accelerated cam wear, and, in severe cases, catastrophic failure. For drivers, the difference isn't obvious after a single oil change. But as the miles add up, especially for those who drive short distances or in cold climates, the margin between passing and failing matters more than ever. An oil that just met the old standard may leave behind enough residue to gradually choke an engine over the course of years. Under GF7, that margin shrinks, and the oil's ability to resist sludge formation becomes a measurable line of defense against silent, long-term damage. Timing chains and turbo bearings are two of the most stressed parts in a modern engine. When a turbocharger spins at over 100,000 revolutions per minute, its tiny bearings face a constant blast of hot oil, often at temperatures close to 200 degrees Celsius. If the oil thins out or breaks down, those bearings can score, seize, or even fail, sometimes without warning. Meanwhile, the timing chain is working overtime to keep the engine in sync, especially in turbocharged engines that cycle between high boost and low load. Over time, soot and fuel dilution from direct injection can stretch the chain, throwing off the cam timing. GF7 draws a hard line here. After 1,200 hours of grueling high-temperature testing, the timing chain can't stretch more than 0.35 millimeters, barely the thickness of a fingernail. Turbo bearings must survive the same punishing heat and pressure, with no signs of scoring or metal transfer. These endurance tests don't just protect the obvious moving parts. They guard against the slow, silent failures that can start with a noisy chain or a slight turbo whine, but end with a repair bill that dwarfs the cost of an oil change. For drivers, this means the oil's job isn't just to keep things running today. It's to keep every moving part inside the engine working together, mile after mile, long after the warranty has expired. Fuel economy isn't just a number in a brochure. It's money out of your pocket, week after week. With GF7, the standard doesn't just demand a higher starting point for MPG savings. It insists that those savings last. To earn the label, oil now has to deliver at least a 2% improvement in fuel economy over a full 1,200-hour durability run. That's the equivalent of driving from New York to Los Angeles and back, twice, without the oil losing its edge. On a car that averages 30 miles per gallon, a 2% gain means about 1 extra mile per gallon, enough to save a tank of gas every few months. The test isn't a quick sprint, it's a marathon, tracking how well the oil resists thickening, friction, and wear as the miles add up. If the oil can't hold its friction-reducing chemistry through the whole interval, it fails. No badge, no shelf spot. For drivers, that means the MPG boost you see on day one is still there at 7,000 or 10,000 miles, not just in the first few weeks after an oil change. The difference is real, measurable, and now guaranteed by the standard, not just promised by the packaging. Standing in the oil aisle, the difference between old and new protection comes down to a single detail: the badge on the bottle. The GF7 standard isn't hidden in fine print, it's stamped right on the front, inside the familiar API starburst. Those letters, ELSAC GF7, are your guarantee that the oil inside has survived the toughest tests for modern engines. No amount of marketing or bold claims can substitute for that mark. If it's not there, the oil hasn't passed the new aged oil LSPI test, the tighter sludge limits, or the stricter timing chain wear requirements. Most major brands now display the GF7 starburst in at least 12mm lettering, easy to spot from a shopper's arm's length. Some bottles also mention both GF6 and GF7. This means the oil meets both standards, offering backward compatibility for older vehicles. But only the GF7 badge proves the oil is ready for the latest turbocharged engines and extended service intervals. With GF7, manufacturers and the API now recommend a 10,000 mile or 12-month change interval, assuming normal driving. That's not just convenience. It's a sign the oil can keep protecting long after the odometer rolls over. For drivers, checking the label isn't just a box to tick. It's the difference between running an engine that's quietly wearing out and one that's built to last for years to come. Right now, the label on your oil bottle decides how your engine ages, mile by mile, year by year. GF7 isn't marketing. It's the difference between quiet protection and silent creeping damage. In a world where engines work harder, that small badge means everything. Choose as if the next 100,000 miles depend on it.